Hello and welcome back to Sonic TV. I'm Andrew Weir and this is the rigging tutorial series. This is part 1, and as part 1 I'm just going to give you a quick outline of what the whole series is going to be about. And I'm going to split it into a few different parts. First, and when I say parts I don't mean the videos, I mean like sections and playlists of videos. So the playlist, the first playlist will be this one, and that's going to cover all the knowledge that you want. And it's going to cover all the settings and so on and how to move them around if you're an extreme beginner. And then the second part I think I'll move on to actually rigging a human character. So we may as well focus on this playlist right now, and this playlist is the knowledge one. So part 1, the basics, is going to be for extreme beginners. If you, I mean obviously you need modelling knowledge. I mean you're moving on to rigging. You're going to want to rig something, you don't just start at rigging, so I'm hoping you've got the knowledge of modelling. But if not, screencast keys, I will turn that on, as it's already on. I'll just make sure that you can see what I'm doing with the mouse. Okay, so that's okay. And close that, as you can see there. Okay. And if you've already seen rigging and you've seen a few tutorials, or maybe just one other, then some of this stuff's going to be a little bit too basic. So skip through it a little bit at a time, I'd suggest, just to see if you haven't missed anything. Otherwise, if you're a beginner and you've never seen a tutorial before on these, then stick with me, or just stick with me anyway, and we'll get through it. So, I'm going to firstly go to Add and Armature Single Bone, and that's where all your bone and meta rigs will be, and all your rigging adding options. So if you've got add-ons selected, it'll all appear here. But we want single bone, as it's just one bone on its own, so let's go single bone. And if you've never seen it before, this pyramid looking shape is what it's all about. You can make it look differently, which we'll get to later, but this little shape here, it's got 3 modes to it. Object mode, hoping you've got modelling knowledge from before, you'll know what object mode is. Edit mode, pretty much the same as any other edit mode, but it still needs going through, so we'll go through edit mode a little bit. And pose mode, which is the new one. All going through in this tutorial, this beginner's one, and then we'll get to the advanced stuff afterwards. So, looking at the shape here, it consists of a tail, which is the thinner side, and a head, which is the thicker side. You can follow me along if you want, or you can just look, because I'm going to be talking quite a lot, but it's kind of essential that you get your head around all this stuff, so you can actually go on to rigging. So I'm hoping I'm trying to help you here in the right way. I can comment if I'm not. And this bone here, it's got 3 modes, as I mentioned, but it's also got 4 new sections, as each thing has new sections in its settings. But we're not going to be looking at these chains, because they've both got a chain on them. We want, because they're constraints, which we'll have to get to in the advanced stuff, we want the bone settings and the armature settings, / object data it's called, but it's really the whole armature settings, and this little bone here is the single bone settings. And as we've only got 1 bone, we may as well start on the single bone settings. So we can, right at the top, we can name each individual bone we got selected. Quick mention that you should be in edit mode when you are doing this, just because you don't know which bone you selected on when you're naming it, but we've only got 1. So if we did have 2, then we want to be in edit mode and we want to select it. And when selecting it, you can select the head and tail separately, or you can select it in the middle, select the whole thing. So bone, I'm just going to name it a 1 for it's bone number 1, so I'm just going to call it 1. And looking in these settings, as I mentioned, the tail is the thinner side and the head's the thicker side. We've got transform, which is accurate moving of the head and tail. So head, move on the x-axis by 1, and that should be all pretty simple. Y-axis by 1, and z-axis by 1. Why not? And then we've accurately moved it diagonally that way, which can come in handy. But less accurately, you can just grab the head or tail and grab it and move it. And I don't think I need to go through that on the tail, it's the exact same. And roll, that is also pretty simple. Just rolls the bone. And that gets into the more advanced stuff, which I'll have to get into later. as rolling can come in handy, but not at the moment, so we'll leave it for now. And so we've got this bone here. When you want to start making your rig, you'll be tempted to go in edit mode and press add armature single bone, but it doesn't allow you to do that because you can't just add in another bone. So what you've either got to do is click on your bone and Shift D to duplicate, and then you've got two bones, but they are exact copies of each other, in which case it doesn't really link them in any way, and you couldn't really rig accurately as you need a connection and you need parents. So let's delete that new bone and let's click the tail. And we don't want to click the head for a reason that I'll explain in a second, but you can for very special situations, but otherwise always click the tail and go back to your modelling and press, well, this is going back to your modelling, press E just as you would for the extrude, and you can do the exact same thing with these bones. So pretty much the same as your modelling, but you're not working with the same shapes. So this new bone, if I move it, you can see that they've got the same connection in the tail and head. So this one's head is connected to the tail there, and so on. And that's how you'd make it. So you can pretend that this is a leg, and right now it'll be upside down, so I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis by 90. I don't know why I typed 90. Or on the x-axis by 90 again. We can pretend that this is a leg, and this will be the knee in the middle. Just bend it like that, and there you've basically rigged a knee and a leg. So it's pretty simple. I'm just going to flip it the right way up again. And so with all the knowledge of that, you can pretty much already rig something, but obviously you can't without weight pitting. So we'll get onto that later. And another thing to mention is I click on this new bone, and its parent, its new name is 1.001. I'm just going to name it 2. And we can see that down here we have parent being 1. So as I extrude as many from here as I want, all their parents are going to be 1, which you just extrude it from. And if I extrude from the head down here, it's not the same case. So that's kind of why you don't want to extrude from the bottom, unless you're in a special situation where you will have to extrude from the bottom, but otherwise parents always go back to the tail, and you always want to extrude from the tail. Tail being the thin bit, as I mentioned again. I'm going to delete these new bones on the side. And so as I say, as it's parented, we can move it around and the tail is connected. If I take away the parent, I move it around, it's not connected, which can come in handy or whenever. And while it is parented, we've got these options down here, which are more to do with pose mode, so we'll get around to them in a sec once we've looked at all these, a few more settings in the whole armature settings. So go to Object Data, and we've got the name here, armature. I'm going to name it maybe body, because people usually make bodies out of the mesh, so and they rig that. So I'm just going to name it body, even though it might not be a body that we're making. And we can see that if I click the plus on the armature setting up here, we've got body 001, which is the name of my armature. So we've also got the pose, which is separate, but we'll get around to that in a little second. Back into object data, or object mode even. And we've got these two bones here, and while they're inside your mesh, let's just add a mesh just to make this a little bit easier to understand. Scale it down, just move it roughly into the bones and scale it on the z-axis. Okay, while we're in the mesh like this, we can't really see it. We go into edit mode, not on the shape, sorry. We go into edit mode on our bones, there they are. Edit mode, and we can't see them. So, a good thing to see is here in display in the object data settings, click X-ray, and now it's X-rayed through any mesh. Make it a lot easier to see and animate while you're working with it. But what's even easier is when you're actually, if you want to work on the mesh while you want to see the bones, then click on up here, see the blue one. That is what it's already on, but we've got 4 different modes here, and they're different viewing, the way to view the bone. The bones don't actually change, but it's just how you're seeing them. So we change it to stick, and now they're a lot thinner, and we can work with it while it's on X-ray, and still see the bones. Or we can click B-bone, which is just an alternative to that one. People might prefer that one, or that one. I personally prefer that one, it looks a lot better, but this one's maybe good for beginners or something, I don't know why, but just a different way of seeing it. And we've got this one here, which is another way of seeing it, and that makes it kind of simpler, but I don't really understand it. I don't understand why all this stuff's around it, and so on, so I'm just going to ignore that one. Maybe you'll find it easier, or you'll know what it does. And then there's wire, which is even thinner than stick, but the little tail and head are very easy to click. Rather you go to stick, try and click the little heads, it's not as easy. So that just helps you while you're animating or while you're moving it around, but I'm just going to keep it in its original view like that. And what we can also do is in the same display settings, I'll just close everything else so that you can really see it. Display settings, we can also click names, and it's quite hard to see because there's such small names. But this little dot here, that's actually number 2, as my bone's name is 2, and that little dot there is 1. So the names appear on the bones, just in case you didn't know what they were, or you lost track of them or something, and you just want to see what they are. That's a good way to see the whole of the bones. Okay, I've returned it back to normal now. I might have just skipped a few seconds, but I'll return it back to how it was before the mesh was there. And we can click back onto it. We're in object mode. And now I'm going to take it into pose mode, I think. And we have these 2 bones in their original position in pose mode, which they are in edit mode, same position in object mode as well. But if I go into pose mode, and I want to move it, I can't grab it by the individual heads anymore. That's like more specific to edit mode. And when I rotate one, it rotates from the head. That's the same with this one as well. Rotate, oops, rotate, rotates from the head. And I rotate it like that, and I think if I rotate it like that as well, just for the example, then we've got this little shape here. I go back into object mode, and it keeps that shape. So that's how you'd move it around, and you can animate like that. You can just put on the little keyframe thing and get your work going, as long as you've got your weight painted. But if we go back into edit mode, we'll see that it's gone back to how it was before we moved it. So that's how it is. And just imagine that edit mode, it never leaves the position that you've put it in to start off with. So we've got this new shape here, and I've set up a new scene. What we're going to do is in edit mode, we're going to move it into that position that we want. So we want to rig this. I'm going to turn on the previously learned X-ray, so display and X-ray, and then I'm going to edit mode, maybe moving it a little bit to into the central on object mode, into edit mode, front view, putting it about there and putting this up here. So in edit mode we put it into the right position, which is exactly what we need to do. So we put it into the position we want, but then in pose mode, if I move it, then we've got it in that position now. And just imagine the whole thing's moved with it, but I want to go, and then when I'm coming back to it, I'll go into edit mode and it'll still be in that original shape, just proving that that's how it's used, and you want it to be exactly where it was when you start off, and that's never going to move from that position for as long as you move this around. So, pose mode, I can make my whole animation. He moves over there, and then his leg bends even more, and then maybe in the animation he goes over here, and I can't mess it up. I go back to edit mode and it's still over there. So we have actually in object mode moved it down there. So that comes up with a new problem. We want to move it back to its original position to start a new animation. Well, we want to clear the rotation and clear the location. So let's go to Alt, and rotation is R, so you press R to rotate, and G to grab. So we want to press Alt and G, and that moves it back to where you grabbed it, and back to its original place. Then, selecting this one up here, because it's the only one that I've rotated, Alt R, and that clears the rotation back to normal. So now it's back to its original edit mode position. And I hope that's kind of explained it. I think that's as far as I'm going to go for the basics. I'm going to move on to constraints next, and then weight painting maybe. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll see you next time on Zoink TV. Catch part 2 as soon as it's out if you want to subscribe. And remember to like the video if you've liked it so far. So, bye for now.